Welcome to the third episode of the BDFM special series, the NSFW series. I am your host, Rivo. This episode contains explicit adult content descriptions. Please listen with discretion. This time we continue our last discussion on Yelu and further explore another category of fetishes. I invited my good friend, NewYorkMilker, a Nong Niu blogger with over 230,000 followers on X and other social media platforms, to talk about Nong Niu with me. For viewers unfamiliar with the term Nong Niu, let me briefly explain. Nong Niu refers to a method of achieving orgasm without penetrative sex, purely through manual stimulation or using tools to stimulate sensitive points. As an experienced Nong who has been deeply involved in this field for many years, NewYorkMilker will share many of his experiences and insights with me.
This is BDFM Trains. Transfer is available to the shuttle to Grand Central. Connection is available to Port Authority bus terminal.
Alright, I'm going to start by asking you the very first question. You've chosen to refer to yourself as NewYorkMilker, and I'm naturally going to assume that you actually began this particular activity in New York. Is that right? Could you tell us a little bit about what led you to start doing this?
First, when I was in high school, my family decided to send me to the United States for my education. When I first arrived there, I actually didn't have a very comprehensive or healthy understanding of sex. At that time, one rather extreme belief I held was that engaging in penetrative sex, whether as the active or passive partner, could very easily lead to contracting various diseases. This meant my understanding of HIV/AIDS transmission was simply not clear enough at all. So back then, I felt that in a place like New York, which seemed so incredibly promiscuous, I would feel extremely unsafe there. So at that time, I would often ponder what ways existed for me to address my own personal physiological desires. If the act of sexual intercourse, however, based on my understanding at that time, felt unsafe to me, I then more often chose to go by myself to masturbate and resolve this particular issue. Later, through some foreign adult websites, I discovered a tag called Kongshare, which is cum control. It had its own dedicated section, and I watched several videos there. That person became a significant inspiration for my own journey, truly my online mentor. He's currently based in San Francisco and goes by the name Dr. Cum Control. I believe that anyone who is part of this community, if they had watched control ejaculation videos from outside the circle in the early days, certainly be familiar with this individual. Therefore, it was by watching his videos during those early times that I first became involved in this milker community. So why did I later choose the name NewYorkMilker? Because I set a very clear goal for myself. I must become the most skilled milker in New York State. And I've spent all these many years in New York achieving this very thing, and I've also been acknowledged by my colleagues within the industry. Now, the term colleague or peer might sound a little bit amusing, but in my personal understanding, it's like this. In my view, if you manage to impress a master, that's quite natural. But if you can get all your fellow professionals to rave about your skills, if you're truly recognized by your peers, then you are genuinely exceptional. Because, to be perfectly honest with you, during my recent period of time spent back here in the country, I really started to feel that the relationships among the farmers themselves weren't quite as outwardly friendly or cooperative as they might appear. In actual fact, behind the scenes, there was a considerable amount of open competition and subtle, hidden infighting. Although perhaps saying this might draw some criticism from people who would claim it's clearly just a relaxed way of playing, but I'm making it sound like impresses in the place. But I, personally, believe that perhaps some individuals haven't gone through such experiences, and therefore they might not perceive the existence of such a treacherous and dark side. But it's true that those farmers who are truly adept and operate at a very high level among themselves, they are generally quite reluctant to share their valuable cattle with anyone else.
Yes, I can understand that. After all, quality cattle are a rare resource, aren't they?
Indeed, in any place, there's always a state where top talents are few, and ordinary people are many, whether abroad or at home. It's the same.
Right, because I'm looking at your account right now, you've already reached over 233,000 followers. That's truly incredible. Because when I was working on this topic, you still had 220,000 followers, which means in just a few weeks, you gained over 10,000. So how long have you been running this account?
If I were to be very precise about the timeline, my second account, I believe, was actually created by me sometime around the very end of the year 2018, because you see, this account at that time really served as a very clear dividing line, because in China, the majority of people went from being completely unfamiliar with and not understanding this Nong Niu playstyle to a point where the term Nong started appearing absolutely everywhere, along with Kong Shen and Bian Yuan and similar terms. That whole shift, I believe, happened around 2019. Yes, and then it just so happened that in 2019, a prominent figure from the British cattle breeding community issued a specific X announcement targeting regions in various countries where controlled breeding practices are quite popular. For example, in the United States, it's organized on a state-by-state basis, which is essentially equivalent to our provinces here in China. The top-ranked farmer in every single province and city has their own specific list, and that particular year, I just happened to be included on New York State's list.
Wow, so amazing.
So, what I'm saying is, this also established my position in New York, to put it hyperbolically, a dominant one. Even to this day, New York's premium resources are still concentrated in my hands.
Oh, so if you've already left New York now, how are they going to manage?
Actually, strictly speaking, I haven't completely left because I still go back to New York regularly every year.
So you said you began this account at the end of 2018, and do you still remember what your very first piece of content was?
My very first video related to cattle breeding was probably one I did with a white guy. The longest duration at that time was 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and that video of mine was about 2 minutes and 10 something seconds, almost a full 20 seconds long. It was a video of a white man's bull, but he only ejaculated once.
So back when you could only upload 140-second videos, wasn't the editing process quite challenging for you? I mean, playing one round of Nong Niu could easily take 3 or even 4 hours.
Actually, everyone has gone through this particular phase, a time when their skills weren't quite as developed. At that point, I certainly couldn't achieve what I do today, where my X content would feature 9, or even more than 10, continuous perfect streaks or flows. At that time, I could only really describe myself as a complete beginner, a total novice. Back then, the actual pressure of my editing work wasn't really focused on my technical skill level. My technical pressure, my editing pressure was more about how I could effectively cut out all the unnecessary filler words and all the content that was completely unrelated to the main topic. For example, I might film a video for an hour, and in the middle, the other person suddenly asks me to stop. They want to rest, drink water, or they feel, oh, I'm not feeling it, and ask me to untie them. Then they want to chat for a bit. So there's a lot of content unrelated to the main task, which I need to filter out, unlike what I'm doing now. My original footage was almost 2 hours, nearly 90% Nong Niu's content, so I'll need to filter. Years ago, filtering just meant cutting out meaningless parts. Oh, that's how it worked. So earlier, before 2 minutes and 20 seconds was actually enough. I personally think for newbies, because honestly, I can't judge this from the perspective that most people generally recognize, but from my own personal point of view, I feel that a lot of what's currently called farming, you know, in quotation marks, their creative content actually doesn't have much to do with actual farming, nor with the whole act and style of being a farmer. Therefore, many people's videos, in terms of their technical substance, aren't really all that meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel that in the current online discourse, there's a mainstream voice that questions this act of Nong Niu. It's like, oh, isn't Nong Niu just having someone else masturbate you? From your perspective, it's definitely not like that. Could you explain, help us clarify this misconception?
First, you just mentioned that for people who don't understand NNN, in their perception, they might think it's just having someone else help them masturbate, which means they could easily do this themselves. So why would they want to engage in NNN with you? Actually, I want to seriously clarify one thing here. Farming is not some casual game. I also hope no one equates these two. This easily makes outsiders and even those with hidden agendas think that farming has a very low barrier, just as long as you can, right? Just pick it up and play and you can farm. I think this is...
There's a common misconception about farming cattle because it's actually a gameplay style that requires a relatively high level of skill. So could you explain what farming cattle is? And since you mentioned it's high skill, what specific gameplay styles does farming cattle actually involve?
My personal view is that Nong Niu, or farm cattle play, first has a crucial premise. It does not involve sexual acts with emotional attachment. Secondly, it's neither a form of master-slave play nor is it considered a type of SM. It stands completely independent of these other forms of play, and its primary core focus is on the development of male genital pleasure, making that the central aspect of the play. So, regarding the core techniques involved in these practices, I personally believe one is edging, which is commonly known as edging internationally. The second core technique is cum control, also widely referred to as cum control abroad. I consider these two to be the fundamental core practices within this type of activity. Could you please explain what exactly is edging and what is cum control? When we talk about edging, it's best understood if we visualize it using a clear timeline. We define this specific period, starting from when a male's genitals, much like a bull's, begin to fully erect and extending all the way up until the very moment just before his first ejaculation. This entire duration, from initial erection to the brink of the first release, is precisely what we categorize and refer to as the edging period. So, as the dominant partner, you are required throughout this session to use your various techniques and methods to bring your submissive partner to a sustained and continuous climax. However, this entire process must not result in their ejaculation. A prime example, familiar to many, is what's known as orgasm denial, which is actually just one of the many playstyles within the broader practice of edging. For example, let's use the most straightforward explanation. When someone is about to climax, we release our grip. This can actually be understood as the most direct method of what's called climax destruction. Yes, this particular stage, in my understanding, is referred to as edging. However, when it comes to edging, if it's simply a matter of the other person being close to climaxing, and as soon as they say something, you just let go, I believe that's truly the most basic and initial level. Because I personally believe that it's actually possible to generate different levels of climax through the interactive layering of various techniques, using the pleasure of a subsequent climax to build upon the previous one, or even completely overshadow the earlier sensation. Oh, this I think is also considered a somewhat advanced, even edgy method, belonging to a higher tier of experience. Well, of course, for the majority of people, the way they approach edging is by immediately letting go with their hand. So, because of this, many people will have a specific request. When you're getting close to ejaculating, you absolutely must tell me. Right, because many people actually don't have enough experience themselves, and they have no way to judge when the bull is about to come out. So, when everyone watches the creative videos that I make, some of them will privately message me and they'll ask, why don't you add some background music to your videos? Or why don't you use some ambient lighting for them? My explanation is that first, music would completely disrupt my ability to control the breathing frequency of a cow because, as we all know, when someone is nearing climax, their breathing becomes much heavier and more frequent than it normally would be. That's right, yes, and this is also a very convenient way for you to practice edging. Secondly, why not use various mood lights to enhance the eroticism and visual appeal of the scene? Because I believe, first and foremost, we are aware that when the genitals are on the verge of ejaculation, the testicles will exhibit an up and down, undulating movement, and the glands will also undergo a subtle expansion, a rhythmic pulsing, expanding, and contracting. Wouldn't you agree? And it's quite evident that the urethral region will noticeably swell to its maximum. Specifically, the area between the urethral opening and the testicles will become distended. So, in essence, this particular sensation requires you to... Is that the coronal sulcus? Yes, right at the coronal sulcus. Then from the frenulum area extending down to the testicles, that's your urethra. Before you ejaculate for about 10 to 15 seconds, it will swell up quite significantly.
Oh.
That's why I don't want other lighting to influence my nuanced assessment of his intimate areas, because that would lead to misjudgment, and misjudgment would prevent me from properly managing the delicate pacing of the moment. Consequently, some people feel that I appear quite unresponsive in my videos, lacking sufficient interaction, because I was actually intently observing and feeling his current state.
Yes, I've noticed that the style of your videos feels quite different from, for instance, I used to follow another cattle farmer vlogger whose name I can't quite recall, but he would talk to his cows throughout his videos and even chat and joke with them. So I really feel that your two styles are quite distinct.
Well, first and foremost, I respect every individual's approach to how they play the game. Secondly, I must say this is simply my personal method. Naturally, I will also implement some minor, subtle adjustments. I have, in fact, previously uploaded several videos that show me frequently engaging in conversations with Niu throughout the entire process. However, personally, I often find that sometimes during a conversation, the topic can easily veer off course, and that really affects one's state of mind. Yes. Because imagine this scenario, you're with your partner, engaged in an intimate act in bed, and suddenly you have to take a phone call, or perhaps your discussion unexpectedly turns to something like deep philosophy, or even work-related matters. That would significantly, truly impact the mood and atmosphere of that very moment. Sometimes it might be better to say nothing at all. Let me tell you something quite interesting. I often encounter individuals whose primary attribute is M, but their secondary attribute, or perhaps they're curious to explore N. That's because with me, I can very clearly and precisely identify a person's main and secondary attributes. If his primary attribute leans towards M, but his secondary is submissive, a typical trait is he might want you to use rough talk and humiliation on him during the process. He might even want you to hit his chest or slap his genitals. He'd hope you'd do that. I've tried rough talk before and I found it very awkward. I think it would make me laugh. I personally think that sometimes not saying a single word is actually quite a good thing.
Yes, I myself really don't understand this swearing thing.
Right, and when you're speaking, it will also add to the difficulty of your post-production editing for the material you filmed. All things considered, I personally lean towards a fully immersive experience, yeah, and that's just me. But for others, I have no such demands. If you're enjoying it, how you express yourself is your own business. But for myself, I need to be completely focused.
So what if there are some cows, for example, whose personality is just that they naturally don't like to moo? For instance, when you're interacting with them, they're like a pillow princess. They simply won't release any pheromones for you to detect what stage they're currently in. In that kind of situation, how would you manage or control that?
First of all, no cow in my hands will ever stay silent because I have more than enough techniques. I'll go through them one by one and I'll always make it moo. So I believe if you can't even make a cow moo, then you just need to go and practice your skills more. Because some of my friends are lawyers and others hold quite serious professional positions. So when I see their everyday moments or the videos they share on their social media platforms, their personal presentation in those videos tends to be quite serious, very reserved, and they speak very little. But I think when they're playing the farm cattle, I will personally awaken their individual primal desires.
Okay, so you've just explained what edging is for us. Could you also explain what cum control is?
Cum control, or what I personally refer to as ejaculation control, this specific stage immediately follows what we call the edge or threshold. To put it in terms of a timeline, it's precisely the period that begins with the bull's very first ejaculation and continues all the way until its final ejaculation concludes. This entire duration is precisely what we define as the ejaculation control phase, and during this particular stage, the requirements placed upon the farmer are quite stringent. Let me just mention something a little off topic here. Almost across the entirety of X, or in any of the places where people might view streaming media content, what is actually presented, very few individuals are truly able to demonstrate a complete controlled ejaculation process. Most of the time, it's primarily just the edging phase because controlled ejaculation demands a much higher level of technical proficiency. The first thing is you must master how to control the sage mode, as we should all be clear about what sage mode is. It's a state that occurs right after we ejaculate, where we feel a strong urge not to have anyone touch our genitals. This is a purely physiological state. So psychologically, for many men after sex, he might become quiet and withdrawn after ejaculation, even unwilling to make eye contact with you. This is a completely different state from the extreme passion he showed you before, right? So you must master how to control his post-nut clarity. So what I'm demonstrating within my X is how I employ a particular technical approach of mine, allowing me to directly override his sage mode by introducing an alternative intense mode of pleasure. Consequently, you'll observe why my bull remains incredibly firm even after the initial release.
Yeah.
First and foremost, my partners, when they take Viagra, it's entirely their own choice. I would never demand they take it just to be with me. Therefore, many people might misunderstand me, perhaps thinking, oh, do your partners need to be on medication to stay hard after the first round? That's simply not the case. The Nong Niu technique can ensure that it stays hard even after the first, second, or even third ejaculation. This is precisely why you need to accurately control its refractory period. This is achieved through various techniques, and with each technique, you can adjust the force and speed, and you can even alter the lubrication level between your hand and his genitals. Let's say, for instance, between the 6th and 7th climax, I might introduce a small amount of clean distilled water to adjust the level of lubrication on my palm. This alteration would then create a distinct sensation of stimulation for his organ. To put it plainly, it's a technique where you must learn to master rhythm, frequency, and how to effectively control both friction and its coefficient.
Wow, this sounds quite technically difficult.
Because people on the outside just think it's about using your hand to masturbate or jerking off, right? But in reality, that's not the case at all. Because if you go and check out my work, you'll discover, hey, some individuals can do it 7 times, others can manage more than 10. So how exactly is this accomplished? You really need to learn this. This isn't something you can just pick up, do a few times and be done. It doesn't actually have such a low barrier to entry. It's just many people think its barrier is very low. Some might even use the Nong Niu name to do other things.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Because very few people engage in pure farm bull play, I feel that in China, it's less common. They usually have mixed play styles, for example, incorporating some master-slave elements or with master-slave as the primary focus and farm bull as secondary, or even using the farm bull label to arrange sexual encounters.
Yes, that's exactly it. I feel that most of what you can find on mainstream streaming platforms these days is probably just using Nong Niu as a mere appetizer, just like when people arrange SM. It's only an appetizer for sex.
Actually, you'll find out why 2019 marked the beginning of the Nong Niu phenomenon in China. Because back then, prior to 2019, you simply wouldn't see people on social media applications openly displaying Nong Niu in their personal bios or other related terms such as controlled ejaculation or edging. Absolutely no one would ever write these kinds of terms. So, starting around mid-2019, on some mainstream domestic gay dating apps, some people began to identify as bottoms, but they would still use their dominant identity. For example, an S-bottom. This country top type of talk, because maybe with that Nong label, they're more likely to hook up with guys who just want to be simply taken by some big dicks, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, this is probably just a bit of teasing, just like I said.
Yes, I see.
Well, if your skills aren't up to par, your body isn't in good shape, your appearance isn't appealing, and your size isn't impressive either, then what do you do if you still want to date someone high quality? There was a popular joke, wasn't there, that those who fail at all these things just become escorts, yet I still want to pursue it. Now, I'd also like to add that you can go into farming because in China, the threshold for farming really feels like it's been lowered by some people. Some outsiders think, oh, it seems like as long as you can just do a few simple tasks with your hands, you can be a farmer.
And they might not have truly experienced what a real workhorse is like, so they just assume that the kind where bad drives out good, that was the workhorse.
Actually, it was if we discuss this here, some viewers might find it a bit too much of a rat race, or it's like that old saying, why do women tear down other women? Why do farmers tear down other farmers? It's not really about harming anyone, because some people online criticized me before, saying I was stopping some players from enjoying. I don't think it's that exaggerated, because the number of cattle in every city is quite large. It's just that the number of high-quality ones isn't as high. I, for one, would never stop others from engaging in this farm cattle activity, but the point I've always emphasized is that you need to be sure that your activity is indeed farm cattle. If this behavior of yours has no connection to farming cattle, or if it barely accounts for at least over 50% of the total time, if it doesn't even exceed 50%, then you can't call this doing farm cattle.
I used to have a misconception about Nong Niu. I thought it was just cum control because you also said you came from Dr. Cum Control. I think the biggest challenge with Nong Niu is finding a bull who can ejaculate so many times, because I feel that normal guys usually, after ejaculating once, their whole being, whether it's energy or mentally, just collapses. So I wanted to say, if one could shoot 7 or 8 times in one go, how incredibly gifted would that person be? But after you finish speaking, I realized, it might indeed be related to your technique.
First of all, most of my regular clients, when I first met them, couldn't do it continuously 6 or 7 times like he does now. Maybe at first it was only 2 or 3 times. When you first meet someone, you're completely unfamiliar with their sensitive points as a whole person. In that situation, you can only rely on your own experience. For example, like me, every single time I encounter a new client, they might state a sensitive point on the communication app, but that's only what they personally consider sensitive. They might have other potential sensitive points that they themselves are completely unaware of. So what exactly do I need to do then? When I first engage in this Nong Niu play with him, I'll need to draw upon all my accumulated experience from over the years. To put it simply, I'll apply those stimulating and sensitive techniques that 80 to 90% of Nong Niu typically enjoy. I'll go through them one by one directly on his newsy, and throughout this entire process, I will carefully observe his reactions. Then, for each technique, starting with slow speed and gentle force, gradually adjust the strength and speed. This allows us to observe their reaction and determine if that specific sensitive point can be effectively stimulated. Some techniques might make the person uncomfortable, making them feel, oh, that's not very comfortable. It's too intense. So for this particular spot, I would mark it as an area not suitable for intense stimulation, but gentle, slow stimulation can be used to gradually improve it. Because it's not necessarily that he dislikes it, it's just that he might not be accustomed to it yet. So in the initial stages, when you're not very familiar with him, based on previous experience, you can generally get him to do it 2 to 3 times consecutively. As for achieving 6 or 7 times now, or even more than 10 times, as demonstrated in a video I previously posted, that is certainly the result of consistent long-term practice and training with a regular partner. This level of achievement also necessitates a deep understanding and familiarity with each other to be accomplished. Of course, if someone possesses the innate ability to reach more than 10 times on their very first attempt, such instances are exceedingly rare. I have encountered individuals who, on their very first time with me, were able to achieve it 7 times, but those instances are exceedingly rare. The majority of cases, however, are achieved through extensive long-term training, working with consistent partners, developing a regular and intimate understanding, and then assisting them with their practice. For example, this particular spot, you don't actually dislike it. You just haven't been stimulated so intensely before, so you're simply not accustomed to it. Then, through regular intimacy with me, over time, you'll adapt and even want it more intensely. Wouldn't that then allow for more frequent occurrences?
I'm very curious, and I think this is also a common online misconception. During your process of farming the bull, when the bull is having such an incredibly good time with you, able to ejaculate 7 to 10 times, what exactly is your physiological orgasm as the farmer in that
Well,
situation?
actually, for me personally, the Nong Niu behavior primarily fulfills my psychological gratification. However, it's not entirely possible to say that it doesn't satisfy any of my physical pleasure whatsoever. Now, if we're discussing the satisfaction of physical pleasure derived from Nong Niu, then visually, wow, for instance, if this person is a very muscular man, he might possess an impressive, even awe-inspiring size. But these things only provide a momentary visual presentation for my satisfaction, because when I meet him face to face, my greater demand on myself is that I must use my skills to truly impress him, to make him feel that my technique is excellent. So, the physical pleasure is really only for that very brief moment, including the time when you first make contact with his genitals. After that, you'll mostly need to rely on your technique to make him experience intense pleasure, to feel truly good, and then he'll express it through his body's reactions, for example, moaning or even struggling. Or, if his language becomes abusive, pause filled with foul words. And pause a huge contrast to his original calm state. That pause, these are actually a kind of psychological gratification for me.
Am I understanding this correctly, that what you might truly enjoy is the feeling of controlling a man who is physically very strong, yet he entrusts his most vulnerable self to you, and you can freely dictate the entire progression of his physical gratification? Is that the kind of profound psychological satisfaction you're seeking?
I don't deny that at all, because I truly feel that a sense of contrast is definitely something I appreciate. You see, my own personal physique isn't really the muscular type, so basically everyone I've met and those I'm consistently with right now are all quite big and muscular. And honestly, I do find myself enjoying that aspect quite a bit. But for complete control, my premise is mutual consent and willingness, not coercion. Because if you get a chance to talk to the partners I've been with, you'll learn that throughout the process, whether when I first met them or now that we're close, I always ask, how do you feel? Are you enjoying it? I will always ask him about his feelings, because I believe that feelings are very important. I cannot just focus on my own pleasure and make the other person feel uncomfortable. So, regarding the word control, I think it would be better if you understood it more as mutual acknowledgement, because I don't like causing others pain while I myself feel happy. I don't like doing such things. So, for me to be in control, he must be willing. He asks me, wants me to do it this way, or he accepts me, willing to let me do this to him.
So all these processes are also a mutual negotiation.
Yes, negotiation is absolutely essential, because with this submissive dynamic, I've always believed one of its biggest differences from master, slave, and SM is that in terms of status, everyone is mutually equal. You can't just say, oh, you get off on it so others should be uncomfortable or in pain. For example, some of my subs have told me they've met people before who had long fingernails or calluses on their palms. You know, when people work out, some of them develop quite a lot of calluses on their hands, and when they rub against my glands, it can cause a really sharp, prickly, stinging sensation. Some individuals, after such an encounter, might wake up the very next day with a burning sensation in their urinary tract, or perhaps even develop something like balanitis. Frankly speaking, you haven't really provided them with a truly good experience at all. You simply haven't paid enough attention to these crucial details. For example, my personal requirement is not to grow long nails, not to have calluses on my palms, or wear any rings or jewelry. These are actually just, well...
Yes, as you were just speaking, describing your entire process, I became quite curious. Your hands, I imagine, must be incredibly soft and very fair, wouldn't you agree? Considering they've likely been immersed in lubricant countless times or have come into contact with so many different bodily fluids, I truly believe your hands must possess an exceptionally supple texture.
Actually, fair skin is likely genetic, a matter of inherited genes, and for this, we really should thank our parents. Now, as for keeping your hands moisturized, I suggest that many people, essentially no matter if it's spring, summer, autumn, or winter, should at least apply hand cream once every 2 days, especially every time after working with your hands and washing them. You absolutely must apply it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're in contact with liquid for such a long time, your hands should get wrinkled, right? And they would, just like when we take a bath or when we swim for a long time, our hands get like that, right? So I really can't imagine what your hands look like every time after you finish playing.
Actually, what you'll find is a significant amount of semen that has been thoroughly mixed in with the lubricant. Then, after you've completed washing, you might find it necessary to use a soap-based cleanser or perhaps some powerful antibacterial products to ensure your hands are thoroughly cleaned. And afterwards, it's absolutely crucial to apply a good moisturizer, specifically some body lotion or a rich hand cream to keep your hands well hydrated and feeling smooth.
Oh, I feel your hand can already become your...
Just like Heidi Klum bought insurance for her legs, I think you should buy insurance for your hands.
I have a story about something interesting that happened to me, which is that I was in a car accident in 2023. So back in July, I was involved in a car accident. I was driving my car at the time when a vehicle from another province or city whose driver was drunk collided with me. My car was then involved in an accident. And I was unharmed at the time because the car's quality was so good. The airbags protected me very well. I wasn't hurt at all. But after I got out, I took a picture of the totaled car and posted it to Moments. Many people will comment below, "Is your hand okay?" It's quite interesting, actually. Indeed, for them, perhaps my hands are truly different from many people's. I'd also advise many people to try and protect their hands so they don't get too rough. Because if your hands are rough, when you touch someone else's skin, it will make them uncomfortable.
This is different from what I had previously thought, because I've seen many other bloggers, they would use gauze or other materials to stimulate the bull's glands. I assumed that the rougher the texture when you're working with the bull for collection, the more pleasure the bull would experience.
Well, regarding the roughness and shabuser that you just brought up, I have a few preliminary remarks I'd like to make. I personally believe these shabuser playstyle should not be categorized as Nong Niu. That is to say, in your NNN practices, you can incorporate shabusawa, but if your NNN practices are entirely shabusawa, then your actions in fact cannot be called NNN, but rather SM. Because honestly, gauze won't really cause pain. That stinging sensation shouldn't happen unless your lubrication is insufficient or your pressure is too much. That's when it will cause stinging. Generally, it's more of a tingly, numb feeling. This particular sensation, for certain individuals, can actually induce a profound sense of pleasure. Therefore, as demonstrated in my videos, for instance, some people, when I suddenly apply the gauze, might involuntarily urinate. Others might even experience ejaculation directly from the intense stimulation of the gauze itself. Gauze can be used in Nong Niu activities, but I don't recommend it for too long. Yes, because if the force, speed, or lubrication isn't properly controlled, it could damage someone's genitals.
Yes.
Therefore, I would strongly advise everyone, before you use gauze, to try and soak it in a container for at least 30 minutes beforehand, fully saturating the side that will be in contact with the genitals using lubricant. During the process, it's also important to frequently relubricate the gauze. This ensures maximum protection for the area in contact with the genitals, preventing any damage. Therefore, this sensation of roughness, for some individuals, it can be quite stimulating and enjoyable, while for others, it might simply feel unpleasant. Perhaps essentially others might think, oh, shibari is very stimulating, very exciting, watching others' reactions, monatashi. But in reality, many people's personal feedback to me was that some feel this is something you can try occasionally, but not for the entire process.
Wow, if it's constantly being stimulated by the gauze in that spot, it must feel very, very uncomfortable.
I've encountered those whose primary attribute is M and secondary is bull. They prefer more SM time. Generally speaking, so what they are.
So they like the feeling of being tortured, is that it?
Yes. So pure bulls, they almost never like to use gauze. Some of them being, even before they meet me, they'll make it very clear saying, no gauze. So with this kind of person, you can tell right away that they're definitely not the type for M.
Oh, yes, that's right. And I've also come across a certain saying, but I have a feeling that this particular practice might be more commonly used between men and women. It's called kunji. I actually don't really truly know what its specific definition is. I don't know if you know.
You can think of it as a climactic destruction.
Okay, so there's no difference between it and edging, is there?
I believe that kanji is actually a part of the broader category of edging. I can briefly give you a few examples of different edging techniques. The first one, as I just mentioned, is what we call climax denial. For instance, you might suddenly release your hand, or perhaps you use a different method to override the intense sensation created by the previous technique. For example, let's use a simple illustration. When he's about to finish, I let go, then immediately start spanking him. At that point, his sense of pain will instantly override his pleasure. This is a method used by those who engage in SM and cuckolding. Another method is that he might intensely press down on his genitals. This is also a way. Actually, for this edging process, there are quite a few methods. It depends on what the person you're playing with can accept and what you yourself are good at. But both parties must communicate well, because some people just don't like being spanked.
Yes, there could certainly be people who aren't masochists, and they'd probably be quite bothered by the idea of being whipped.
Right, because pure Niu people feel that you shouldn't use vulgar language with me. Don't suddenly hit me. Don't tickle my feet either. And don't suddenly talk about things unrelated to Nong Niu. I'm simply not interested, and I'll just find it a complete turn-off.
Yeah, if you put it that way, M has so many ways to play.
Indeed, I won't deny that SM offers a wide variety of play styles because pony play itself is far more niche. It's a type of play that belongs to a much smaller community. Some people might even mistakenly believe that pony play is simply SM. They might think, oh, I see this person tied up like a pony. Is this considered SM? Allow me to make a brief digression here. I truly hope no one will think that just because they see a cow that I've tied up, they'll assume my behavior with it is S&M. First and foremost, a primary premise of my bondage is that he's unable to control his own body. He will move around erratically. Among these uncontrolled movements, his hand might suddenly reach out and grab my wrist, halting the edging or dry firing techniques I'm currently performing. That effectively means he's disrupting my entire rhythm. I am in my own rhythm. I can manage it well and produce multiple results. But if you, needing a short break because it's too much, suddenly grab my hand and interrupt me, you've broken my rhythm, and that's not what I want. So, if I determine you're unable to control yourself and might interrupt me by grabbing my hand, I will certainly tie your hands behind your back or secure them to the chair beforehand. But if you're like some of my regular clients who can completely control their hands throughout the entire process, then there's no issue. I won't need to restrain your hands. So in some of my videos, you will see that they are not actually tied up. Their hands are simply clasped behind their backs, and some don't even need their legs to be bound. What I mean is, if you can properly control your own body, then you won't require any form of restraint. Therefore, I hope that everyone doesn't assume that just because bondage appears in my videos, it automatically implies it's SM. Bondage is not exclusively used for SM activities.
Right, and I feel that SM's binding methods are probably quite different from the purpose of your binding. I see your binding basically just serves to secure his body, but SM's binding is likely more about enjoying the pleasure from the friction between the rope and the body.
What you've said is absolutely correct, because all I really need is for him to simply not move around, especially his hands. They must not interfere with what I'm doing. And also regarding what you just mentioned about that SM bondage, because some fans had told me before that they hoped I could tie things more artistically. You see, there's a specific play style called priests, where they are solely responsible for the tying, to tie it artistically, to make it look really good. Well, my explanation to them was this. If I were to spend a great deal of time tying them, people might arrive feeling quite enthusiastic, but while I'm tying them, they could just lose their spirit. So, I will try my utmost to cut down on the time spent on the binding process. This also applies to the specialized chair I later employed for the agent. I directly bypass the entire process of securing the legs because it allows for the direct separation of the subject's legs. As the task of binding the legs is quite substantial, I therefore aim to directly save any time that is not absolutely essential.
Wow, this chair truly has a very interesting design. I think you could send me a link later and I'll definitely put it in the show notes. For those of you who are able to see a picture of this chair, you'll notice that the gaps next to its two armrests are perfectly sized to fit two legs.
Yes, I was thinking at the time that I really needed a chair that was completely black. And importantly, its legs and the backrest supports should all be cylindrical tubes, not the traditional rectangular frames. Because the sharp edges of those rectangular frames, if my hand were to rest against them behind, would really dig in and cause pain, making it quite uncomfortable, and it would also leave a very noticeable and deep impression. So I later found some design manufacturers conveyed my ideas, and with some drawings, I then successfully designed this particular model. So this particular model, actually, right now, back then I actually approached a furniture factory in Foshan and I presented my ideas to them, including this design. This specific chair should now be available on the market because that furniture factory wouldn't have produced just one chair solely for me. They would likely have released it for general sale. This chair has actually been around for almost 3 years now. I think most people can find it online now on Taobao or other e-commerce platforms. And the chair itself is really no different from a normal chair, so your family won't suddenly come over and see a strange chair. So, when designing it, you also had to ensure its daily usability. It couldn't be too outlandish, otherwise you wouldn't be able to integrate it into your daily life.
So where do you meet all these amazing people? For example, how did you meet your first white guy?
To put it simply, my very first regular partner was Korean, but the first person I actually posted about on X, that one was white. And the first partner I met was in the school dorms back then, because American schools, their dormitories, our school at the time had single, double, and triple rooms, you see. At that time, I chose a double room, and the very first person I met there was my roommate. This matter is quite a long story, so I'll just give you a brief overview. I discovered that he had a particular liking for this spraying behavior. Then, through a series of fortunate coincidences, I introduced him to the concept of Nong Niu. From that point on, we began this Nong Niu routine every single day, and gradually I developed some effective techniques for my own moves. This is truly a matter of destiny, including my entry into this field was also fate. But for other masters in the early days, you had to actively seek them out, because you had no reputation and your skills were
weren't good. You could only proactively find them. This is something I often tell many people. If your skills aren't fully developed yet, don't be overly selective in the beginning, unless you are truly outstanding. But if in the early stages you possess no particular strength, or if you directly consider yourself to be absolutely nothing, then you must take the initiative to work alongside others. Let them guide you and treat this as a valuable opportunity for growth and experience. Initially, I proactively use every farming chance to train my skills, but now I basically don't need to actively ask anyone, hey, wanna play, or anything like that. Many friends will recommend people they know who want to try squirting to me, or like some dating apps, they'll also send private messages. Every day, I get many DMs from people wanting to meet me or just wanting to get to know me.
So now, I've gone from being the one who always took the initiative to being the one who gets to choose.
Well, like you said a few days ago, your Xiaohongshu would, right from the start, have many people coming to you. Indeed, once you reach this level, after you gain this reputation, you truly no longer need to actively seek out others.
Yes, that's certainly the case. And because of that, I really feel that as long as you can successfully manage just one single account, then you'll undoubtedly perform exceptionally well with all your other responsibilities.
Oh, of course, my purpose on Xiaohongshu isn't to have so many accounts like X. It's just that someone impersonated me on Xiaohongshu, inviting some of my fans, which caused them to question me. Later on, I discovered it wasn't actually me. Because someone else had been using my ID to impersonate me. I haven't been very strict about managing this situation because I believe you can only deal with one such instance, not 100. As long as the other party doesn't cross the line, it's fine. But because the person actually met one of my fans offline, and since it has now involved real-life, in-person meetings, I truly feel it's quite necessary for me to open an account to let everyone clearly know that I am the actual person behind this ID. So I've actually decided that next month I'll be deleting pretty much all the content I can from Xiaohongshu because I feel their review mechanism is quite strict, and it's just to prevent some people from using my name on Xiaohongshu to arrange meetings with others who want to hook up with me.
Well, based on my understanding of you over these past few years, I think you're a very discreet person online, basically never revealing any personal information about yourself. I feel this is quite rare for an account with hundreds of thousands of followers, including information about you and the cattle you play with. You try your best to protect it. For instance, based on what I've personally witnessed, you would cover up their tattoos and then you would alter the pitch of their voices. I feel you've done quite a commendable job in this aspect.
Well, first off, I've always personally felt that farming cattle is a niche playstyle, and everyone should just keep to themselves and enjoy it privately. Of course, expanding your circle isn't a problem. It's just that I think it's better to influence people gradually. That's why I generally don't go around promoting things widely. So I never repost or share anything on my homepage or quote other people's content because I truly believe you just need to focus on creating your own good content. Those who want to watch you will naturally watch, and those who want to understand you deeply will naturally get to know you. There's no point in trying to force others or bringing in traffic from people who aren't your intended audience. It serves no purpose.
Also, I want to tell everyone, if you show your face on social media, don't show your private parts. If you show your private parts, don't show your face. And finally, try your best not to reveal your personal privacy online, such as your phone number or home address. Yes, so I think everyone should protect themselves. Regarding personal privacy protection, besides what you just said about covering tattoos, I'll share some tips here with some friends. There are many ways to cover tattoos, including scars. For example, as we just discussed, you can use adhesive materials to conceal them, or you could also apply some liquid foundation or concealer, or simply wrap the area directly with electrostatic tape. And another option is to use some kind of deceptive treatment. For instance, if a cow has a tattoo on its left chest, just covering the left side isn't enough. You need to cover both sides. This is called deceptive covering, because some might infer the person's body type and the covered area, associating it with someone they know. So if you truly want to protect others, you need to employ deceptive methods to cover it up, or perhaps use black liquid eyeliner to create some artificial moles, because some people will often say, oh, he has a mole on his left side, it seems like so and so. So creating these moles is also a way to protect the other person. And the audio absolutely needs to be handled carefully, because some individuals are still public figures, you see. When public figures engage with you, you need to earn their complete trust. You must be absolutely flawless in your execution. Therefore, it's often the case that only when you genuinely protect others will they be willing to stick with you for the long run.
Wow, I've really learned so much from this. I feel like today's episode's main theme could definitely be called the Nong Niu Masterclass.
I
think
wouldn't call myself a master really. I'm just saying everyone should diligently study and hone their own skills. I just hope no one DMs me again asking if I can play with their glands or insert a urethral sound or whip them. I'll just say one thing. If you want to play SM, don't come to me. Let more people outside the community have a more accurate understanding of this Nong Niu play. I don't think I can really claim to be great myself. I'm simply speaking as someone who has walked this path for many, many years to offer some guidance to those just entering or already established in this field. And that is to diligently practice and truly hone your skills. Don't be overly focused on immediate gains or become too impatient.
Let me ask you something first. So every day when you're on Nong Niu, did that include scheduling your leisure time and also socializing with these people? How much time do you spend on it daily?
Firstly, it was because WeChat back then had a rather limited number of accounts one could register and also a low limit on friend additions. So in my early days when I was living abroad, I ended up registering quite a few WeChat accounts. I had many accounts at that time, and that's still the case for me even now. Well, actually, the time I spend on these every single day is not a lot, but it's not a little either. Because, to be honest, if you truly want to consistently play with so many people, the very first thing is you must ensure you possess sufficient time. You simply cannot have others invite you 3 or 4 separate times, and you always tell them you're unavailable. And secondly, you absolutely must have the right to fully manage your own personal schedule. For example, you could ask your boss for some time off, or perhaps you could work from home. Because, truthfully, some people's working hours aren't what we'd consider normal office hours. For instance, consider those in K-12 education. They might work from Wednesday through Sunday, then have Monday and Tuesday off. So what would you do then? If they only want to play on Monday afternoon or maybe Tuesday afternoon, could you really make time for them? Of course, what I mean is that I can't abandon my job or let it negatively impact my work just because of the cattle. That's simply not an option. It's just that my personal time management will be a bit more flexible, so I'll be spending more time, perhaps more than many people, on farming cattle, but it won't take up too much of my time. Because I'm currently more the one doing the screening, not the one actively initiating contact. So, the amount of time I spend won't be as extensive as it was back when I was studying in the United States. Now, I can usually determine, often within just 2 or 3 sentences, if this individual is capable of continuing the conversation or if they're ready to progress to the subsequent phase. Therefore, I won't be spending an excessive amount of time on it. If we strictly consider a 24-hour day, I might spend only 3 or 4 hours on Nong Niu activities online or offline. That's during weekdays. Weekends, it's a bit more. On Saturdays, for instance, I might have 5 to 7 Niu in a day.
5-7 cows.
So it's usually 2 in the morning, then 2 to 3 in the afternoon, and another 2 to 3 in the evening. That's generally the schedule we follow. This is because some of the cattle typically require about half an hour each, and that's not even including the time spent tying them up, untying them, or for their bathing. When I tie them, I don't use any heavy restraints. I just ensure they are unable to move around too much. Some people don't need to be tied down. The average person plays for about half an hour. So if you don't work all day on Saturday or Sunday, you actually have quite a lot of time. It just depends if you want to spend more time playing games or if you'd rather go out to watch a movie or go shopping. It really just comes down to your own time management and your weekly schedule. You know, some regulars, even though they come every single week, they might not be able to make it for 2 weeks. In a particular month, then you can just give yourself a little short break or something like that. Weekend.
I think you've really packed your schedule so very tight.
I wouldn't necessarily call it tight because in my personal opinion, if something is your preference, something you genuinely enjoy, then I don't believe it's a burden. I think for some people, tight might refer to doing something they dislike but are compelled to do. Personally, I'd actually quite enjoy a schedule like this. I'd really like it.
So, have your arms become really well trained and strong now?
First of all, these past few years, since I'm probably not as young as I once was, I might experience a little bit of soreness here and there. As for its muscle definition, well, I can only say there's no excess fat.
What I mean is, for example, look at your Saturday. You have to deal with 7 people. You have to handle 7 individuals. If you, in just one day, have to milk 7 cows, and each one takes at least half an hour, that means you're doing at least 4 hours of high-intensity exercise. Your arms must be incredibly strong, right?
Well, I think at least my arms won't have any flabby fat, and I feel pretty good about that. I wouldn't really call myself strong or muscular because my body type isn't the kind with big muscles, but I'm definitely not fat.
Think about it. You only just graduated. How could you be an old man, right?
Some people just suddenly start talking and then a whole bunch of others will jump on the bandwagon. Sometimes I don't really want to clarify anything, but since I have this opportunity, I'll just clear things up. Please don't think that I am someone who is very old, because I am not.
Yes, actually, NewYorkMilker is a very cute, fair-skinned, and delicate young boy.
I still like being praised this way.
Well, I think this is simply describing the facts. You truly are a very cute person, but I believe that very few people actually get to see your appearance. So I can only let everyone picture in their minds that you are a fair-skinned, adorable Southern boy. Because just by hearing your accent, I know you're from the South. So let me ask you, with so many impressive people, 7 of them every day, what kind of person would you like to spend time with? For example, considering their background, their conversation style, or whether they're smart, from all these different aspects, what kind of applicant, what kind of candidate would you choose to hang out with you?
Let me explain these to you, starting with my current situation. My profile clearly states, if you send me a private message, please make sure to include your body picture and your cock picture. Actually, the physical requirements don't mean you must be very muscular, specifically having a lot of muscle. That's not necessarily true, nor does it mean you absolutely need to have a huge size like 19, 20, or even 21 centimeters. That's not a requirement either. I believe these are all misunderstandings or misleading ideas that some people online have spread about me. The reason I asked you to send me body and cock pictures was to cut down on our communication time, because I really don't want our conversations to resemble those on certain domestic social media platforms nowadays. For instance, apps like Fanka, where people simply exchange hi, hello, or ni hao repeatedly. So, I hope everyone communicates more efficiently, more directly. You want to chat with me privately, isn't it just to ask about Nong Niu?
Then you should have an average criteria.
So first off, you'll need to send your body and cock pictures. Once I've seen them and I feel that they are acceptable, then we can proceed to discuss the subsequent details. Those details would include things like your location and my own. If we happen to not be in the same city, then we'll communicate through other means. Now, some people might say, we're in different cities, so we'll first add a more convenient and direct way to connect. For instance, some might add Telegram, others WeChat. It simply depends on what method they choose to further communicate with you. This particular step then helps you to more clearly determine if you want to meet them, which also reveals a key aspect of their personality. I'm not suggesting you need to reply immediately, but at the very least, I don't want a message to be replied to a month or even a year later. I feel that this type of communication is simply ineffective. Therefore, once I've confirmed their photos are suitable, I would then suggest we add a more convenient method for us to connect. So, once we've added you, we'll be able to immediately, or within 24 to 48 hours, establish an effective way to communicate. So during our conversation, I'll probably need to clarify a few more things. For example, first off, do you prefer a highly skilled player, someone you'd like to consistently play with, or do you prefer to play with a variety of different players? So this question will serve as my initial screening. Are you someone who truly values technology, or are you just looking for excitement and novelty? If you are merely seeking excitement and novelty, then we won't be a good match. In that case, we probably won't even have a chance to meet. Personally, I feel that currently, in terms of technical ability, I find there are very few individuals who can truly measure up to my skill level. So if you've already gotten to know me and you're still willing to go and engage with others, then I would have to conclude that we two are probably not on the same path. You're after fresh thrills, but I need more to stay long-term with people I know. This is the first screening. If he says he likes better skills playing regularly, then no problem. Then he'll have that. Secondly, I need to screen them. What I mean is, I'll chat with them about some everyday topics, for instance, your fitness routine, or which city you primarily reside in. However, I generally avoid delving into personal privacy. I would never ask any of the men I'm considering what they do for a living, or what their salary is. I won't ask these kinds of questions because they are quite private and simply not appropriate.
Well, unless he himself chooses to expose it?
Right, my personal style is, if you're willing to talk, I'm willing to listen. If you're not, I don't like to ask, I'm afraid. I'm afraid you'd feel offended. And the progressive layers of screening are really just about whether you're suitable for me. Since you took the initiative to message me, it's true, then it really comes down to whether you're a good fit for me. If you are a good fit, then and only then will we have the opportunity for a subsequent meeting. Wouldn't you agree? Furthermore, there are some people I choose not to meet on the very same day. This is because I firmly believe in the saying that when people interact with each other, their initial encounter or first impression is almost certainly not their most genuine self. He might interact with you while wearing a disguised mask, so you'll need some time to slowly uncover his true nature, to determine if he is truly the right person for you. That's why nowadays, situations where you add private contact information and then meet immediately are very, very rare. For me, personally, I would certainly hope to spend a minimum of a few days or even a full week to truly ascertain if this person is genuinely suitable. For example, not if I communicate with him for a week and his enthusiasm for talking to me, which was high on day 1, even adding private contact, slowly fades by day 2 or 3, and by day 4 or 5 he stops talking, then I'd think he's either typically fickle or just extremely busy, right? If he's not extremely busy, he's typically fickle, and someone so fickle won't consistently play with you.
Yes.
So now, to many people in the cities where I'm regularly based, I clearly explain one principle. If you're in my resident city and want to meet up, you need to commit to playing regularly with me. Because I truly believe no one in this city is better than me in terms of technical skill. This might make some people think I'm arrogant, but I believe I have the ability to be arrogant because of my skills. I also feel, through video presentation, it's true, because I think there's a very true saying, whether something is cool or not is a very subjective judgment, and it cannot, others can feel if it's good or not, but there's a very objective factor everyone can judge. The same cow in different farmers' hands. In my hands, it can perform 6 times consecutively. In his hands, it only manages twice. So who do you think is more capable? Yes, we eliminate any variables. For example, no one is allowed to use rush, no one is allowed to use VGO. So if everyone controls the variables consistently, then I can do it multiple times, but you can't. Isn't that a very typical way of using quantification to judge who's better? Yes, and so my video style, from early on being very bloated, overly detailed and verbose, has now become concise and to the point. I've even highlighted this change multiple times in the video, right from the first line, showing how often it's applied. Yes, I can clearly feel it. Because I feel this is for others, many people who go on X. Some people in China, they might need to use a VPN. And some of them might be using free ones. Perhaps they can only be online for 5 minutes a day. So you have to cherish their 5 minutes online. You cannot put out any ineffective content. If the video and the text don't match, that's not okay. Then I'll just directly... The caption needs to be clear. This video shows how many sessions and what specific body type it features. If you're interested, then click below to watch. If you're not interested, just scroll away. I truly believe that being concise is my personal style, and I also think clearly explaining the main points is my style. I don't like overly verbose communication. I much prefer effective and direct methods. So when people don't know how to judge who's truly capable, I believe this is a very, very fair metric, wouldn't you say? I can only express it like this. It's a genuinely fair indicator. That's precisely it. Of course, the feeling of satisfaction is subjective after all. Some people might just think, I don't care what kind of technique is used. I don't care if it's diverse or not. I don't care if it's controlled or not. Maybe if I see his handsome face, I'll feel really hyped up. Well, that kind of person might not be a good fit for me. Personally, I'm not a handsome guy. Oh, I think you're being too modest. If we're talking about the mainstream aesthetic in China, or even within this specific circle, I don't really fit the mold. I'm not what you'd call a handsome guy. I don't belong in that category, and I fully admit it. So if your greatest psychological satisfaction comes from good looks, and you don't really care for the pleasure derived from technical skill or mastery, then I honestly believe that we're just not on the same wavelength. Just like some people say, oh, I absolutely need to be very muscular. Some people directly state this on their dating profile. Well, that's obviously not the kind of person I'm looking for. Then there's no point in us even trying to communicate. It will just be a waste of time, right? That's why sometimes it's really important to clearly articulate your requirements. Because everyone's time is incredibly valuable, and this isn't the moment for us to be studying. Everyone has their own important matters to attend to. So how exactly can you explain these urgent requirements clearly and distinctly, right? So when I communicate, I tend to be quite direct. I won't waste time talking about irrelevant things with you, because it's a summary of many years of experience. I believe everyone progresses from being unfamiliar to proficient, then truly expert. Even your selection criteria, you slowly learn what you truly want, because initially you don't know what you want. You'll feel very vague. You'll feel quite frustrated. Whether the other person feels wronged or you do, it will happen. So clarifying these principles right from the start is good for both him and you. It prevents situations where someone might say, oh, I'm here now, and your style just doesn't suit me, or you're not muscular, I don't like it. Then he'd have to force himself to complete this task, and I really think that's completely unnecessary. Right from the start, when you're communicating online, make sure all the terms and conditions are clear. If it's not a good match, then there's no need to meet. There's absolutely no reason to force anything.
So could you tell me a ratio out of everyone you've connected with online? What's the proportion of those who actually end up meeting you in person offline? For instance, what's the ratio, like how many to 1?
If I were to have 100 different people private message me in a single day, only about 10 of those individuals would truly end up getting my personal contact details. And if out of those 10 we managed to meet offline again for a Nong Niu session, then half of those 10 would probably drop out. If from that remaining half, anyone who played with me once would continue to play regularly, then maybe only 1 or 2 would be left. Someone who truly wants to meet you, they'd be willing to cross mountains of knives and seas of fire. Willing to come see you. Because for me, if I genuinely want to spend time with you, I'd be willing to sacrifice my personal time, even my work time, to be with you. But the absolute prerequisite is that it cannot affect my job. For instance, if a meeting isn't absolutely necessary or doesn't have to be held today, then I'll just postpone it.
I really do like your lifestyle.
Because those who truly want to see you will let no obstacle stand in your way.
Yes, that's right. He really wants to see you. He'll definitely come out to see you.
Yes, it makes you feel he's having a tough time. But there's one point I must acknowledge. If he's truly strictly controlled by his parents, because I've met people like that whose parents are extremely controlling, then I can understand such individuals. After all, there are special circumstances, right? I can't just dismiss everyone in such unique situations, can I? But typically, I believe everyone should be able to manage their own time effectively. So why do I prefer to schedule appointments well in advance rather than last minute? Because scheduling early, first, proves to me that you genuinely want to meet. You can plan ahead on your timetable, you can organize your time, and you can free up a specific slot for me. Second, you can properly prepare yourself both physically and mentally.
I've also said this to a few people. I said, oh, you've dedicated so much of your time and money to training your own physique. Why don't you find someone who truly aligns with the level of effort you've invested to hang out with?
Yes, they all absolutely have to be the best. You wouldn't go for something that's not really good, would you? I mean,
This isn't quite right. It really depends on how each person sees things. Let me first clarify something. A common misunderstanding netizens have about me. They say I always insist on finding something really big, something with a truly massive size. That's not true at all. I usually just see your photo. If I think it's okay, then we can talk. I'm not the kind of person who's always after the most extreme size, because I feel that with certain sizes or certain techniques, their sliding trajectory can make me feel quite painful and very tired.
Oh my goodness, I can't even begin to imagine.
So please don't have a misunderstanding about me.
I'm quite curious now. I feel our current discussion has shifted from just the purely technical aspects of cattle farming to the emotional relationship you have with your cattle and the boundaries of that interaction. I'm just wondering, for example, besides when you're actually farming with them, do you also hang out with your cattle in your daily life?
Because I socialize through Nong Niu activities, my regular Nong Niu partners, and I stress my regular partners, I'll go out with them to do things beyond Nong Niu. For example, shopping, watching movies, or accompanying them to certain places for photography, or even traveling across cities. I can even fly alone to another province or city for someone. Yes, these are fine with me, no problem.
Would you fall in love with your cow?
I would absolutely never, but I also have a standard for a partner. I'll look for someone excellent among the very best, but I won't actively fall in love.
So, the act of loving will definitely exist, but I will certainly not be proactive. I feel that being proactive makes one more easily hurt, but that doesn't mean I enjoy being controlled when I'm passive. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just saying I'm unwilling to initiate. But if I'm passive, it just means I'll have more self-protection. And inherently, you shouldn't even have this act of actively showing affection, because some people might feel very panicked.
For example, some people might not want a relationship. They might just want to satisfy their physical needs. If you suddenly talk about romance with them, you'll scare them away. But if the other person gives you that kind of signal, if they initiate it, you can handle it delicately. That way you can reject them while still maintaining your casual relationship. And regarding what you just mentioned about how two people interact, the sense of boundaries in my relationship with my partner. First, I just stress the fundamental point. If he voluntarily shares with me, I'm more than willing to listen. If he's unwilling to tell me, or if he doesn't bring it up himself, I won't ask. Because I feel that respecting others' privacy and maintaining a healthy distance from their work and personal lives is extremely important.
Yeah.
Don't have any thoughts, don't entertain such ideas, and don't do anything to pry into his work or his private life. For example, restricting who he meets. In my understanding, cow play and casual play are two different things. If he goes for casual play with others, that's fine. Go ahead. But if someone else asks you for cow play, you must refuse. That's what you, as my designated submissive, should do. And also a sense of boundaries. And also, when you're playing, you need to be very clear about what's acceptable and what's not. For example, if someone dislikes it, if they explicitly tell you, I won't move spirits. Farming oxen aren't meant to move spirits anyway. Because I've heard from some friends back home that some people tie you down and then suddenly jump on you. Playing one visual in the name of farming oxen, I think that's really terrible. Firstly, the other person is unwilling. Secondly, what if they have severe AIDS phobia and have developed mental illness? Your current actions, just for your own pleasure, will seriously affect others. I think this is a very, very wrong thing to do. I told you before why I said if you can control your body, you don't need to be tied up, because I feel that not tying them up would give them enough sense of security the first time. Even the very first time I tie someone, I likely won't use a dead knot, because I believe tying a dead knot will cause initial fear. Now, people aren't usually here for extreme bondage. They're not into that kind of thing. So I won't tie a dead knot. Therefore, during the session, you must also be mindful of boundaries. For instance, you should periodically ask them how they're feeling. If they're uncomfortable or if they want water, then you absolutely must stop and let them have some water. These are just some details. When interacting, whether it's outside of playing or during the game, you must always have a sense of boundaries. Everyone should be communicating equally, not one person being superior to another.
Yes, I just heard you mention that your main requirement for your exclusive clients is that you expect them not to talk to other farmers. How many exclusive clients do you currently have?
Well, even if, because each region, each
Let's say
local
it's good.
situation, each region is different, you know? If I were to talk about the frequent ones recently, there should be 12 people, right? They are
That's
consistently weekly visitors. Oh, there are two who are consistently coming once every 2 weeks. My fixed schedule is not just about you only following me. It means your regular frequency with me should be at a consistent time. Don't make it Friday this week, then Monday next week, and Thursday the week after. That would completely mess up my entire schedule, because generally all their meetings are fixed to 2 specific time slots each week, and they simply won't change them.
Okay. But you said you don't want your regular cow chatting with other farmers, yet you yourself have more than one. Do they know each other, or how do you manage your relationships with them?
First off, the initial issue is that some of them already know each other, while others, conversely, are complete strangers. And then secondly, regarding what you just mentioned, I insist they stay loyal to me and not talk to other farmers, but then I myself am with other cows and I'll have so many of them. Actually, I want to discuss a conceptual issue here. I've actually tried living with a cow before, and during that time, I didn't contact any other cows. I've done that, and I can tell you very clearly. First, I have a farm cow addiction. I can only tolerate 2 days without a farm cow. Beyond that, I'll be in a state of anxiety and discomfort.
I'm also very clear about this. I need to find a partner among men because I absolutely must be able to play with your dick every single day. It doesn't necessarily have to make you come, but I absolutely must play with it. I once had a boyfriend. It was a committed relationship, and he was living in New York at the time. And because of him, I wouldn't interact with other people. I wouldn't meet other men, and I wouldn't chat with other men.
The first month was quite good. I could touch and play every day. But then she started refusing for all kinds of reasons. If you're not going to satisfy my desires, do you expect me to live like a widow?
I see.
Including a bull asked you the same question before. He said, by what right do you demand I don't hook up with other nongs? Now, I'm more open-minded. They can flirt with other nongs, that's perfectly fine, but no meeting up. So, back to the original question. It's like you demand I don't hook up with other nongs or bulls. Fine, then I need to play at least once every 2 days, right? Is that okay with you? From our starting point, if I was to argue, the fundamental point for both parties is that there's a desire, a need that wants to be resolved. Isn't that right? If you have a need, I can help you solve it immediately. But if I have a need and you can't satisfy me, then must I just remain alone? I mean, do I have to be a widow? But I've tried this before, I've personally experienced it, and I can't do it. And almost 99% of people can't either. So this is also why my close friends ask me, why aren't you dating? Why should I date? No one can satisfy my physical needs. If I want a relationship and then I can't see other guys and my partner can't at least every other day, he just can't keep up. I clearly state my needs. I don't hide my needs. I don't think this is something to be ashamed of. I think if you can't satisfy me, then you can't stop me. But when you want to be with others, I can satisfy you. So why do you still need to look for someone else? I think this is precisely why I'm stating very clearly now. If you want to get together with someone else, you need to tell me. You really need to tell me. Once you tell me, I won't stop you. I will immediately stop bothering you too. I'm just not the type of person who likes to cling. I think it's so embarrassing, so completely undignified. If you want to leave, then just go. I won't bother you. No, but you absolutely must tell me. Don't let me always feel like we're exclusive, only to find you're secretly seeing others behind my back. That's just not acceptable. I would certainly be extremely annoyed. Although this doesn't require a formal commitment, I believe if you want to date other people, you should cleanly end your previous relationship. Don't let others waste their precious time and energy on you. Because I treat my regular partners differently from how I treat casual ones, I invest more thought and effort into them. So I hope that you all and anyone who might become a regular with me in the future, if you no longer wish to continue, just tell me directly. I will absolutely never pester you. So I'm someone who's very clear about what I need, and I also hope that you, the other person, are clear about your needs. Because I don't want to waste my time on you, please let me know in advance. Then I can save my time and give it to people who are truly worth my effort. I'll just give it to them.
And you also put in emotional labor in this situation.
Yes, some not only put in emotional labor, some even paid money. I won't go into detail about that. Anyway, you should always give your time and energy to people who are truly worth it.
I think there's a word you just mentioned that I found particularly interesting, and this is a point I'd really like to delve into further with you, because I saw a post of yours from March 12th this year where you said you never sell any video past, now, and future. I see the vast majority. I think it's almost everyone who makes these videos or any other form of media online. Their ultimate goal is always to monetize. But I feel like you don't seem to have any intention at all to monetize the content you're making.
First and foremost, it's a personal hobby of mine and also a significant way for me to socialize. For me, I really don't want to turn something I genuinely enjoy into something that's solely about profit, gain, or money, because I just feel that once anything becomes directly tied to financial gain, it inevitably loses its pure essence. It's like you're a huge fan of anime and ACG, then you suddenly go to an anime design company and your boss makes you design over 10 anime characters daily and also makes you build the models and work overtime. Then in that situation, would you still have your original passion? It's really difficult when you go from that very soft initial creative process to a point where you frantically need to pay attention to the number of likes, the view count, and the shares. Then I would feel that this has fundamentally changed. The entire nature of it has been altered. Many people tell me to open an OnlyFans or something. I feel if I wanted to, I would have done it already. Why do I need your reminders? I could have opened one when I was in the US. Why don't I? First, I don't want to associate it with my hobbies. Second, it involves money, and that gets complicated because it won't just be you alone. If money matters get complicated, there will be many disputes. I don't want to argue. For my creative work, for example, I always need to consult the person, have them approve the content after I've edited it. Only after they personally confirm and reply in writing that there are no issues do I dare to post it on platforms like X. So every step must be approved by the person and must not affect their personal interests. Personally, I'm very afraid of disputes arising afterwards. Going back to what I just said, whether now, in the past, or in the future, will never open any account to sell videos. I believe farming cattle, for me, is something I truly enjoy, and I will not link it to money. So if you see people online, if you see someone selling my content, they're likely using some download bot or software to get it from my homepage.
I really can't stop this. I can only try my best to make it public, telling everyone not to purchase anything, right?
I have no way to stop these people. I try my best to block any download bots that people tag in the comments of my posts. I'll block them all. This is all I can do now, along with deleting some ads. But sometimes there's too much. I can't keep up, so I just ignore it. I can only try my best to publicize content, telling everyone not to believe this stuff, not to download it. It's meaningless. Don't buy it.
I suppose it's probably because you're already living quite comfortably, so you don't need to make any profit from this.
As a matter of fact, I think,
everyone has a different perspective on this particular matter. For example, I have some friends who, at this moment, their personal work capabilities just aren't sufficient to resolve the immediate financial debts they're facing. So they might find themselves needing to resort to some rather extreme methods, or perhaps even needing to employ some of those strategies that you were just talking about. They might feel it's necessary to use these kinds of approaches to quickly obtain something that can help them solve their current pressing problems. I believe everyone has their own choices, and as long as you don't regret them, that's perfectly fine. And for me personally, my core belief remains that hobbies should never be tied to money. I've seen too many people who, after starting out, later want to monetize their passion, and they become very resentful, completely changing as individuals. I believe if you met me a few years ago and met me again today, you'd find I haven't changed much at all.
When it comes to this path of control, I should always remain the person I was at the start, because I think it's very important to stay true to your original intention. Don't mix your personal preferences with things driven by greed.
So, I'm looking at your current account right now, and the very first post I can find is from May of 2024. Is that because you previously went and deleted all your old posts?
Yes, I had deleted them for a period of time before. Back then, when I was in a relationship, I deleted so many. Later on, it was simply due to some other reasons, For example, when this person didn't want to be with me anymore, why would I keep their videos? They were annoying to look at, so I deleted them, right? Or some people might be dating and say, oh, my partner is quite bothered by this, you should delete it. Then I would feel that I'm also showing you respect. It's about whether people can continue to get along afterwards. Yeah. You simply have to show respect to others. This doesn't really impact my personal interests, and I wasn't originally trying to monetize anything through it. It's simply a way for me to get to know friends and other people. So those are pretty much all the circumstances. So.
Okay, I think we've talked enough. I think your information density is really high.
Actually, it's just years of experience in the agricultural sector, along with some setbacks and lessons. It's a summary of both technical aspects and how to get along with people.
Honestly, I'm quite worried that if you place so much importance on your interactions with every consistent partner, it will affect your mental well-being.
I won't deny it used to affect me, even causing somatic anxiety, but now I'll just cut ties cleanly, quickly, and I won't let it affect me because I feel there's no need to educate adults, just screen them. If he's not right, you move on. If you're not right, you leave. If you're not right for him, he should quickly withdraw. There's no need for us to influence each other, for me to change for him or for him to change for me. It's just so exhausting. I'm currently in a very Buddha-like, a very detached and chill state. It's like, I don't want to do anything at all lately. I don't want to add those videos, don't want to do anything else. It just feels like too much trouble. Sometimes I don't even feel like replying to private messages. I just let them sit there untouched. That's because I've become quite zen lately. I just mentioned something earlier. Cherish what you've had, what you currently possess. It's like many people suggest you can always go find someone new, right? But I say, oh, that's just too exhausting. I'd have to explain my perspective and my boundaries to him all over again. I just feel so incredibly tired.
It's true. This is really tiring. I feel now I also find meeting new people just too much.
Yeah, some people tell me you can slowly, gradually let him know as things progress. I said, then you'll just have a lot of unhappiness, sadness, and suspicion. What's the point? Why not just lay out all your principles up front and make them clear to him from the very beginning?
But this preliminary process takes a long time, so it's exhausting and communication gets really tiring. It's like I've been explaining all this to you for almost an hour, maybe two. Who would enthusiastically meet you on an app, then be willing to listen to you talk about this for 2 hours?
Yeah, after all, they're on the app because they're already horny, needing to get some right away.
I personally am definitely not into that fast food style of playing or farming. I have no need to engage in that kind of fast food approach. It still depends. Everyone goes through different periods in their lives, has different experiences, different mindsets, and different ideas. To put it plainly, once you've truly settled yourself and matured, then you can make your own choices, right? It's all just a process. If you want to be selective right from the very beginning, then you must be truly outstanding and excellent. You're either handsome enough or muscular enough or impressively well endowed, or you're charming enough in every way to captivate people. Then when you first enter this particular scene, you can pick and choose as you please. But fundamentally in this circle, I think eventually the hardcore part is still about skill.
That's how it is. Okay, let's end the recording here today.